But he's going to lose something. He's either going to lose his life or he's going to lose his intimacy with God. Then these presidents and satraps came by agreement to the king and said to him, O King Darius, live forever. All the presidents of the kingdom, or all the high officials of the kingdom, the prefects and the satraps, the counselors and the governors are agreed that the king should establish an ordinance and enforce an injunction that whoever makes petition to any god or man for 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. So here they come with their plot. The plot is, we will declare it to be illegal to make petition or prayer to anyone but King Darius for 30 days. And notice how, of course, they're lying. All of the satraps, all of the officials are in agreement, and we all know that one of them wasn't. Daniel, of course, wasn't in agreement. So they are misrepresenting, they're being deceptive to the king. And doesn't that just really gall you? Doesn't that really gall you when you're lied about? Doesn't it really get under your skin? Don't you just want to say, you know what, you can not like me, or you can not like Christians, or you can not like but just don't lie about us. Just don't misrepresent us. Isn't that what you want to say? Let me try to give some words of help to that, because it's really frustrating, isn't it? Nobody likes to be lied about. So some words to maybe help that would be this. Do you know that the kingdom of evil can only oppose the kingdom of good with lies? You realize that? You cannot oppose the God of truth with more truth. That's just a logical inconsistency. You cannot oppose truth with truth. You can only oppose truth with deception. And so the kingdom of evil will always oppose the kingdom of righteousness with lies. That's the only way that they can. This is why Jesus would say to the Pharisees, you're like your father, the devil. He was a liar from the start, because that's all he could be. If you stand in opposition to the God of truth, then there's nothing you can do except to twist the truth, or pervert the truth, or distort the truth, or at least hide the truth. So maybe that can help with our frustration, because it is frustrating to be lied about and to be misrepresented. I know I'm just like you. I don't like when people lie about me, but at least we can know if the kingdom of evil is going to oppose us, they have to do it with lies. So they do it with Daniel with these lies. They say everybody's in agreement. Let's make this rule, this law for 30 days. You're the only one that can be prayed to. So I want to draw an analogy, a parallel here that's a stunning parallel. There's a parallel to what's happening in the king's chambers right now. And that parallel is the Garden of Eden. Because that's exactly what's going on in the Garden of Eden when the serpent comes to Eve and says to Eve, you can be God. Isn't that what they're saying to Darius? You can be God. For 30 days, nobody can pray to any... Oh, and make this rule that can't be changed. Because everybody knows that a rule that a God makes can't be changed. So they're coming to Darius in the same way that the serpent came to Eve and to Adam with this temptation. You can be God. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't you love to be God? Even for just 30 days, wouldn't that be nice? So they make this proposal. Everybody's in agreement. Everybody's in agreement that you're the only one that should be prayed to for the next 30 days. Now, verse 8, now, O king, establish the injunction and sign the document so that it cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be revoked. Therefore, King Darius signed the document and the injunction. Let me just plant this other seed. I don't want to flesh this out all the way, but let me just plant this other seed for you to put into your mind and begin thinking about and see where the Holy Spirit takes you. It's this. There's a theme in the Scriptures, and the theme is the attempt by man to unify a diverse people by compelling them to worship a false god. That's a theme that goes all the way through the Scriptures. We saw it in chapter 3 with the fiery furnace. We put it off to this chapter to talk about it. But in chapter 3, we saw the same thing. There was this diverse group of people, and they tried to unify them by compelling them to worship this false god. Because you remember the whole setting, Nebuchadnezzar, the kingdom of Babylon, it was a very ethnically diverse kingdom. And so Nebuchadnezzar took all the leaders, all the rulers out to the countryside, and he wanted to make sure all the leaders were loyal to him. So there's the statue that was representing Nebuchadnezzar. Now bow to the statue. If you bow to the statue, I know you're loyal to me. So he was attempting to bring about unity. He was attempting to unify diverse people by compelling them to worship a false god. The same thing we see here. In fact, this is even more diversity because the kingdom of Babylon was already ethnically diverse. Now this new force, the kingdom of the Medo-Persian Empire, remember this was the silver part of the statue. It had the two arms. There was two kingdoms coming together, the Medes and the Persians. And then they take over this kingdom of Babylon that was already ethnically diverse. So it's a diverse group of people that once again is being brought together or sought to be brought together by compelling them to worship a false god. It reminds us all of what's going to take place in Revelation chapter 13. Revelation chapter 13, this is the culmination of all of that, where all these diverse people are brought together under this unifying banner of worshiping the false god. Just a little bit from Revelation 13. Just notice the theme of worship. And they worshiped the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like the beast, and who can fight against it? And all who dwell on earth will worship it. Everyone whose name has not been written before the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb. Then I saw another beast rising out of the earth. It makes the earth and its inhabitants to worship the first beast, etc. So you see the theme of worship there. So there's this theme of mankind trying to bring together diversity of people under the compulsory worship of a false god. Now relate that to our day to day. A few Sundays ago, when we were in chapter 3, we talked about all the false gods of this day, the false gods of the progressive sexual agenda, the false god of the transgender agenda, the false gods that are the gods of today. And just think of just what an effort is being put forth at unifying people under the banner of worshiping the false gods of today. That's what's presented. In force, that's what's presented all day, every day in our culture, is celebrate and be unified. Everyone is together on this. Is bringing people together. This worship of the false gods that we talked about previously. So more could be said about that, but we'll just sort of leave that right there for now. Now, verse 10. When Daniel knew that the document had been signed, he went to his house where he had windows in his upper chamber open toward Jerusalem. He got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God as he had done previously. That is a monumental verse. So Daniel hears of this decree. We're not told that he goes to Darius and says, wait a minute, I wasn't told about this. I didn't agree to this. Hang on. Instead, what does he do? He goes to his chambers. He assumes this posture of prayer, facing through the open window to Jerusalem. And he prays 3 times a day, and we're told, here's the key to the whole sentence, as he had previously done. That's key. Because you see, when this decree came about, Daniel could have started praying more. What if Daniel had prayed 1 time a day? And now this decree comes, and Daniel says in his heart, well, they're not going to tell me what to do. I'm going to pray 3 times a day. Yeah. That's obstinacy. That's pride. And we sometimes see that, don't we? This, you're not going to tell me what to do. Watch, I'll show you. I'll do it even more. Now, Charles Spurgeon says that anything that makes you pray is a blessing, and there's truth in that. But can't we see that that would have been a wrong motive? So Daniel doesn't say, oh yeah? Well, I'll show you. Now, watch me pray now. Instead, he does, we're told specifically, as he had always done. This had been his habit, his long-established habit. And the decree of Darius does not make him pray more, nor does it cause him to pray less. He continues exactly as he has always done. That is so important for us to see. So first, let's think about just how easy it would have been for Daniel to have rationalized his way out of this. God, I've been faithful for 65 years. Can I just take 1 month off? What would 1 month be? I dare say maybe if some of us took a month off of prayer, it might not be a whole lot different than the normal month, right? But Daniel could have said, God, it's just 30 days. He's not asking me to bow down to an idol like Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were asked to do. All I would have to do is just not pray for 30 days. God, I prayed for 60 years. Haven't I built up enough faithfulness? Maybe I could just sort of take a withdrawal from all that faithfulness to carry me through this final trial. It's so important that Daniel doesn't see it that way. Instead, he sees it the opposite. He sees all those years of faithfulness not as something that could get him out of this. He sees all those years of faithfulness as preparing him for this. And so his well-established habit of prayer just simply carries him through. You know, there's something to be said about godly habits. Don't mistake that. Nobody should pray or read your Bible purely out of habit. That shouldn't be why you pray and seek the Scriptures. But isn't it a good thing to have those habits established so that when times like this come, they can help to just carry you through? Because you see, Daniel, it's like he doesn't have to think. It's like he doesn't even have to debate. Well, should I or shouldn't I? Well, I did miss a couple of days last week. And, well, on that one day last week, I only prayed for maybe 30 seconds, so that really doesn't count. So, sure, let's just sort of let this... No, he doesn't have to have that conversation because his habit is so well established and sort of carries him through. It's almost like he just spontaneously does it. And you know that spontaneity really is just the result of discipline and a lot of practice. You know, you ever see maybe a musician that will just sort of spontaneously pick up an instrument and just play it? And you're like, wow, I wish I could spontaneously play something like that. When in reality, there's nothing spontaneous about it. They've practiced it for years, and that's the result of practice and discipline. It looks like something spontaneous, but it's really the result of discipline. Same thing like you might see an athlete do some kind of crazy athletic maneuver, and you're like, wow, I wish I could spontaneously do a backflip. No, they didn't spontaneously do anything. That was practice and discipline. In a similar way, this is discipline and practice that carries Daniel into the same prayerfulness that he's had all along. So just a word about his posture. The posture is, we're told that he kneels. And we've said before that the Bible doesn't tell us what sort of posture we have to have when we pray. There's examples in Scripture of people praying while standing, lying on their face, walking. You can obviously pray in any position, but there is something about that physical position that helps us to have a mindset of submission and humility. So he prays in that kneeling position. And then notice also there's the window that's open. So he doesn't do this out on the street. He doesn't want to make a spectacle of himself. Hey, everybody, look, I'm flaunting Darius's rule. No. The window is open, again, like we're told, always had been. And he's facing, we're told, Jerusalem. Now, what does that mean? What's this facing Jerusalem about? We know that Muslims pray facing Mecca, right? Are Christians supposed to pray facing Jerusalem? And if not, why did Daniel do it? Daniel does this. And by the way, no, Christians aren't supposed to pray facing Jerusalem or facing anything in particular. But Daniel does this because he, number one, knows his Scriptures. And number two, believes his Scriptures. Because the reason he's praying facing Jerusalem is because that is what Solomon prayed in 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 30. At the dedication of the temple, Solomon prays, Lord, if this people, if they disobey you one day and they're taken captive into a foreign land and they pray facing this place, then hear their prayer and forgive them of their sin. So Daniel knows this, and he's praying in accordance with Solomon's prayer, where Solomon pleaded, if this ever happens, then God hear their prayer as they're praying facing Jerusalem. So Daniel's facing Jerusalem now. And remember, Daniel hasn't been in Jerusalem for 65 plus years. So his memory of Jerusalem has to be very dim, very small, very, very old. but yet he still has this place in his heart for Jerusalem. As he shows each day, 3 times he's facing to Jerusalem. Now, that's something that's much more than just a love of homeland. Because Jerusalem, and specifically the temple, that was God's presence, God's land, God's presence. The temple was his presence. And so Daniel is facing this temple that's still destroyed, and he's praying to God. Now, something else is happening. Something else is happening that the passage doesn't tell us about. Remember last week we said in 539 was when Belshazzar was killed. Ezra chapter 1 tells us that in 538, King Cyrus allowed the first, I don't know what to call them, load of exiles. Not load isn't a good word. The first group, there you go. The first group of exiles to return to the land. So, as Daniel is praying, there are some exiles. Ezra chapter 1 told us it was 42,000 of them. There are some exiles that have returned to the land. Daniel is probably praying for them. And he's probably remembering them in his prayers as he's remembering the temple. God, heal our land, heal our people, restore that temple. Restore your presence to us. Those who have returned, go with them. And also we're told that this is a prayer of thankfulness. So what does Daniel have to be thankful for? Because things have just gotten really bad for Daniel, haven't they? I mean, Daniel doesn't know that God's going to deliver him from this death sentence. So right now, Daniel is apparently he's bringing a death sentence upon himself, and he's thanking God. I think he's thanking God for not only his prior deliverance, but those people who are now returning to the land. He's got this heart of thankfulness. So his prayer to God it's not a prayer out of a desperate heart. You know that there's a difference between a desperate prayer and a desperate heart? You know there's a difference? You know that oftentimes we pray a desperate prayer, but there's a difference between a desperate prayer and a desperate heart. Remember Peter, right? Peter's on the water and he feels himself sinking and he prays that desperate prayer out of a desperate heart. Lord, save me, right? But isn't there a different sort of a desperate prayer that's from a peaceful heart? And wouldn't a peaceful heart be the kind of heart that takes the time to give thanks in the prayer? You see, this is a different prayer than we saw in chapter 1. In chapter 1, that was a desperate prayer because there came this death sentence. Everybody who can't tell me the dream must die. And so Daniel and his friends got together and desperately prayed all night. Don't you get the sense that this is a peaceful sort of desperation prayer? In fact, he's got time to give God thanks as he's praying. So there's a difference between a heart that's desperate and a prayer that's desperate. Daniel has learned to have a heart that's peaceful. Even under this self-imposed now death sentence that's now he has brought upon himself, he just has this heart that is peaceful as he prays. And he's giving thanks. And he knows that he will lose something. He's going to lose something because, again, he hasn't been told. He doesn't know that God's going to deliver him from the lions. But he's going to lose something. He's either going to lose his life or he's going to lose his intimacy with God. And I think Daniel makes the decision right then and there, which of the two he would rather lose. Between losing his life or losing his intimacy with God, I think he chooses life. I would rather lose that than lose my intimacy with God. Again, if we could say that truthfully about ourselves, that we value our intimacy with God more highly than we value even our life, this is the point that Daniel has been brought to by the Lord. So now, picking up again in verse 11, then these men came by agreement and found Daniel making petition and plea before his God. So the whole reason that the plot works is because Daniel is so consistent. If Daniel prayed 2 times on Monday and 1 time on Tuesday and 3 times on Wednesday and missed Thursday, then the plan wouldn't really work. The plan only works because he's so doggone consistent. And they know he's going to be praying 3 times a day. He's going to be praying right in front of that window facing this direction. So, sure enough, they make agreement and they come and they find him. They come near and they came near and they said before the king, they come to the king now, concerning the injunction, O king, did you not sign an injunction that anyone who makes petition to any god or man within 30 days except you, O king, shall be cast into this den of lions? Don't I remember something about that, Darius? Seems to me that you made some sort of rule that you were the only object of prayer. The king answered and said, the thing stands fast according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be revoked. He's feeling rather godlike, right? Then they answered and said before the king, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king. Is that true? Here's another lie. He serves the king with great devotion and with great vigor, except in this. So he doesn't pay you any attention? No, that's not true whatsoever. Again, the kingdom of evil can only confront the kingdom of good with lies and deception. So they answered and said before the king, Daniel, who's one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king. So he's just an exile from Judah, even though he's about to be made prime minister. He's just an exile. He pays no attention to you, king, or to the injunctions you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day. Then the king, when he heard these words, was much distressed and set his mind to deliver Daniel. And he labored till the sun went down to rescue him. So we don't know what that means. Maybe he called in some lawyers and said, well, let's look at this thing. Is there a way that we can get Daniel out of this? Is there a way around it? Is there a loophole that we didn't think of? Is there some sort of law on the Medo-Persian books that would be a loophole out of this thing? Or maybe he's thinking, can we get Daniel out of the city? Can we smuggle him out of the city before this thing has to take place? So Darius, like Nebuchadnezzar, has tremendously warm feelings towards Daniel. And we get the feeling that it's reciprocated, right? So Darius is a very likable figure in this story, right? I mean, we hope he can get a way out for Daniel because we like this guy Darius because he's good to Daniel, the center of the story, right? But this is another reminder for us that not all the agents of the kingdom of evil are hated. A great many of the agents of the kingdom of evil are very much liked. This guy Darius is very much liked, but he is nonetheless an agent of the kingdom of evil. He is one who has exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and he has worshipped and served the creation rather than the Creator, and he has made himself out to be God, whether he's likable or not. Whether he is in Daniel's corner or not, he is still an agent of the kingdom of evil. So he says, well, let's try to get him out any way we can, but they're unable to. Verse 15, then these men came back in agreement again to the king and said to the king, now, know this, O king, that a law of the Medes and Persians, that no injunction or ordinance that the king establishes can be changed. So they appeal to his sense of godness, right? You made a law. You didn't make a mistake, did you, king? Certainly you would not have made a mistake, a man like you. The verse 16, then the king commanded, and Daniel was brought and cast into the den of lions. You can't miss the parallel here. As he's cast into the den of lions, when Peter wants to describe our enemy, what animal does Peter have come to mind? A roaring lion. You can't miss the connection. Certainly the story of Daniel was on Peter's mind when he wrote that. So here's, once again, is this battle between good and evil. Those who are part of the kingdom of heaven are in danger. They're now cast into the very den of the lion, the roaring lion. Then the king commanded, and Daniel was brought and cast into the den of lions. The king declared to Daniel, may your God whom you serve continually deliver you. And a stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet and with the signet of his own lords, that nothing might be changed concerning Daniel. Then the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting. No diversions were brought to him, and sleep fled from him. So the king goes back to his chambers. He's so upset he doesn't sleep. He has no diversions. Nobody comes and plays music. No concubines come. He spends the night fasting. So the lions weren't the only ones that didn't eat that night. The king also didn't eat that night. Now verse 19. Then at break of day, the king arose and went in haste to the den of lions. I just have this picture in my mind. PJs, bedroom slippers, hair still all bedhead, running down to the lion's den to find out if Daniel is in pieces or he's been consumed or what. Verse 20, as he came near to the den where Daniel was, he cried out in a tone of anguish. The king declared to Daniel, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions?" Then Daniel said to the king, wouldn't you love to know if he paused right there? Wouldn't you love to know if he just sort of sat there for about 30 seconds? Then Daniel declared to the king, "O king, live forever." Notice there's zero animosity. No thanks to you, king. All I did was serve you, and look what you did to me. No thanks to you. But instead, "O king, live forever. My God has sent his angel and shut the lion's mouth, and they have not harmed me because I was found blameless before him." So he sent his angel. Possibly we could understand that to be a pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus Christ, or probably better to understand that as an angel, a messenger that came and shut the lion's mouth. So perhaps it meant that their appetite left them. Perhaps they found Daniel distasteful. Perhaps the lions didn't even notice Daniel was there. Or perhaps there was just an iron fist that was literally closing their mouth. We don't know, but he shut their mouths because he was found blameless before you. And also before you, O king, I have done no harm. So I'm in here. I'm not blaming you, king, but I didn't deserve to be in here. I've done you no harm. Verse 23, then the king was exceedingly glad and commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no kind of harm was found on him because he had trusted in his God. And the king commanded, notice that, because he had trusted in his God. That's the theme. That's the point. Daniel was delivered because he trusted in his God. He trusted wholly and completely in his God, so much so that he returns to his prayer room in peace and in thankfulness with a grateful heart, prays as he always had because he trusted wholly in his God, and he found his God to be wholly trustworthy.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Truth That Transforms with pastor and Bible teacher Jason Wilkerson. Truth That Transforms is the daily teaching broadcast of Disciples Fellowship Church. We invite you to visit our website, where you will find more resources to help in your journey of discipleship. You can find us at www.disciplesfellowshipnc.com or connect with our Facebook page at Facebook/DisciplesFellowshipNC. Truth That Transforms exists to glorify Jesus Christ through the teaching of His sanctifying and disciple-making Word.